And now we've got to talk about the guy that I think all three of you on your last episode kind of weren't real sure of. And quite frankly, I'm right there with you. I think Derrick and Tyler, you both gave an incomplete as for the Donovan Raiola hire. Tyler, I remember you made a comment on the show that I completely agreed with, where you said if anybody's got the take that the reason Donovan Raiola was hired was for the purpose of getting Dylan Raiola on campus in 2024, it's a bad take. And you are absolutely right. That's an absolutely bad take. But I also agree with Justin in the fact that I think that had to have been in the back of the mind. There's nothing wrong with believing in yourself and being good enough as a coach and hiring dudes that you think are there because you think you're going to be there in 2024 to get arguably the best quarterback that's going to be available at that time. So for me, it's an incomplete for Donovan Raiola because I can't really give him a letter grade when he hasn't coached it down yet at Nebraska. So, and Justin, I thought perhaps it was a little unfair of you to judge him as a less experienced Greg Austin simply because he hasn't coached it down yet as the main guy on the offensive line. But I understand where you're coming from. According to, I can't remember which one it was, Brian Christopherson or somebody else on the Husker 247 podcast, Raiola did work in a similar scheme at Chicago, and they said they didn't think Whipple would accept the offensive coordinator position without knowing who Frost had targeted for the offensive line coach. So I think he's probably cool with it. Whipple, 41 years experience coaching offense, and I think he probably has seen an awful lot of offensive line play that he likes, an awful lot of offensive line play that he doesn't like, and I think he probably likes what Raiola has to offer, and he's probably going to be a good mentor for him. So that's where I stand on Raiola. How about you?
I just want to say, I think it's a cop-out if you say that it's incomplete. If you grade the hire as it stands on itself and his lack of experience at the college level other than 1 year at Division III, you can easily grade the hire itself. You can say his experience is incomplete, but the hire itself is certainly gradable. You can grade that hire. And that's why on the podcast I gave him a C at best. At best, he's a C. I mean, it's an average hire. I think you probably could have gotten a lot better. You could have gone out there and gotten somebody with a lot more experience, because this offensive line was a complete shit show this year. It was a complete mess. If the offensive line, if it was good, then this hire would be, not insignificant, but there wouldn't be as much riding on the deal. So when you grade this hire of an inexperienced guy matched up with this shit show that he's going to take over, never recruited, yeah, I mean, at best, it's a C. I mean,
I'm surprised you gave him a C lower based on that then.
Well, I don't want to be too negative. Got to give him a chance. But this hire did not blow me away at all. I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens. But
I think everybody's with you on that. No, I don't think anybody's happy with the hire. Like, of course you wanted a more experienced coach. And it was a shock that this is the guy that Frost went out and got. I was completely blown away. I was like, the only reason I didn't have to Google who he was is because I knew Dominic Raiola.
But you had to Google his experience, and then
absolutely.
Once you saw like the 3 lines in Google on what his experience was, it was like, oh shit, man.
And then I hear an assistant to the offensive line coach. I'm sitting here thinking he's running errands and getting coffee for him, but they wrote. I believe it was Sipple who just wrote the article on him, and I mean, it sounds like all the Bears players are shocked or upset to see him go. It seems like they all love him there. It seems like he is doing a good job there, at least with the players. I mean, they seem to like him at least. So I mean, there's something to be said for that, I guess.
Well, from all indications from some of the podcasts and whatnot that I've listened to from media folks that are kind of connected to the situation, it sounds like he came in to interview with Frost. Frost was leaning toward the guy at Northwestern. Good Lord, Notre Dame, and then Raiola came in and just blew him away with his written presentation and things like that. And there's other folks that have commented and said that if Nebraska hires this guy, they're getting a good one because he's got an extreme attention to detail, which is a perfect marriage with Whipple because that's what he's all about, especially with his quarterbacks.
And don't they say that about every coach that's hired? They're not going to say, "Oh, this guy fucking sucks."
I know they do. I know they do, Justin. You've got an absolute point there. But let's be honest here. Who the fuck was going to come coach offensive line at Nebraska when they know that the coach has got one damn year and maybe only 6 games to figure this shit out? I mean, really, let's be honest. Who's a bigger risk, Raiola or Raiola working for Frost? Or shit, Whipple after 41 damn years of experience in Power 5 and Mickey Joseph arguably coaching the best damn offense in the country in the history of college football 2 years ago, coming here and working for Frost.
So
I think it's a way bigger risk for those guys than it is for Frost to even look at Raiola as an offensive line coach.
I think Tyler's going to go the same direction I'm going to go.
Go ahead, Tyler.
So if you believe the reports, the guy that was interviewing was Jeff Quinn, offensive line coach at Notre Dame. Jeff Quinn still doesn't have a job. Now, why? I mean, I don't know why Frost went with Raiola. We had a comment, and I tend to agree this was probably a friendly budget hire. And maybe that is a factor in this equation. Was just amount of money, but like,
I don't believe that. I don't believe that because you got a coach that's sitting there knowing he's got one goddamn year to figure this shit out. And if he doesn't figure it out, he's gone. Why the hell would you make a budget-friendly hire if your ass is on the line? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I'll tell you this much. If Scott Frost decides the athletic budget of the football team, I'm going to guess a lot of the other coaches are going to be making a lot more money. I don't think that Frost is making I don't think he is sitting there saying, this is the hire. I think he has dictated an athletic budget to spend. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. It may have nothing to do with money. Obviously, it could have done that. But, like, I don't agree that, like, he went and got Whipple. Whipple was a hot name that could have taken a lot of great jobs. Mickey Joseph could have gotten a lot of great jobs. Like, I think he could have gotten a really good offensive line coach, and maybe he did get one. And really, it's incomplete.
I just want to throw this out there. We know Mickey Joseph. We know his deal. You know, he got a 3-year deal at Nebraska. So if it only lasts 1 year, he's going to make some bank for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
The other two guys, Whipple and Donovan Raiola, we do not know what their package includes. As far as, I mean, right? It hasn't been released, correct?
Right.
I can't.
I don't think so. I haven't seen one.
Okay. So, I mean, maybe it was budget friendly. Maybe it wasn't. I mean, I just think if everything that you said is true, Ken, I mean, you have 1 year to figure this out. Why would you bring Raiola in when you have a seasoned pro that's done this in Jeff Quinn at Notre Dame? I mean, that presentation must have knocked his socks off. I mean, it's
curious.
Because if you look at the resumes don't match up.
Nope.
So, and, you know, and if you look at Scott Frost and what he's hired in the past with offensive coordinators, I mean, we're already on our third one. He's hired 2 guys that, you know, he wasn't able to trust, and he had to fire each of them after 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so maybe his evaluation isn't quite up there. And I think he probably missed the mark with this, but we'll see.
Yeah, my whole
year. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
My whole take on it is that obviously this hire is the most controversial of them all. If I were to guess, I would say that this was probably not the first name on their target list. I don't even think it was the second name. I really think that this was probably the compromise hire that they ended up making. There's a lot of things you can look at with Donovan Raiola and say that it was a bad hire. And there's very few things that you can look at and say this was a good hire. I ultimately think that the hire was probably, like I said, it was probably just we've got to get a guy in here. And Whipple probably was like, well, I can work with this. And we're just going to have to see how the cards play out. And looking at his coaching experience, it's very short. There's not really much to show for it. I tried going on multiple articles from the Chicago Bears and reporting websites, and there really wasn't much speculation as to what his resume or his credentials really were. And so that leads me to believe that this is honestly probably the biggest shot in the dark, which is so disheartening because, like we stated, this offensive line that we've seen this year was just absolute garbage. It was awful. It was horrible. There's no reason why we should have seen 2 4-star offensive linemen look like freaking walk-ons. It just was an absolute shit show. And I don't really have much confidence in this hire considering those things. He's young. He doesn't have much experience, and essentially we rolled the dice with this, and that's really upsetting because if there was 2 areas we needed to see the absolute most change and most turnaround in, it was the offensive line and special teams. And right now we've got an answer for offensive line. I don't like it. And we don't have an answer for special teams yet, and I don't like that either. So that's where I'm concerned. Where I'm concerned. I think that, yes, there could potentially be a high ceiling for Donovan Raiola, but as far as evidence to show that, there isn't any. Just because the Bears were meh, they were kind of the last 4 years or 3 years they've
middle
been
of the road.
Middle of the road. And I don't like using NFL as evidence to transition to FBS and vice versa. Yeah. So I would say at best, in my opinion, I think this is a D minus hire. It's bottom, not an F, because I mean, you would have to have a long, illustrious history of being a complete and total shitbag to be an F, but he's barely above that. And that's me being really I'm giving him a lot of credit by saying D minus.
It's not like we got a guy that was busting tables at Chili's, I mean, he's playing the position. But if you grab your notebook and
or being a bank teller,
either one, hell, I don't care. But if you have your notebook and you draw a line down the middle and you have your pros and cons, your pros for Raiola what are they?
Last name.
I was gonna say his last name and his beard. He's got a cool beard.
Yeah, I mean,
it looks good. He played at Wisconsin.
Beard going.
He played at Wisconsin, where they know how to build up some offensive linemen, so he's got that going for him.
He was a grad assistant at Notre Dame, which helped put off a lot of NFL linemen. I get everything you guys are saying, but let me just end on a positive note here. Just go back there. There's little. Sometimes and if you want to say that you have to have a mile-long resume to be a successful coach, well, you want to see evidence against that. Look at what Michigan did this year, because they did not bring in guys with a lot of resumes. Their safeties coach was coaching high school last year. Never coached it down of college, NFL, anything. Never even a grad assistant. Their defensive coordinator was a 3-year position coach in the NFL. And yes, I know he's not the assistant to it, and Justin liked to point that out, but he also took over the coordinator position. So, sometimes you talk to a guy and you just know. And I think Frost knows the scoreboard. I think he knows what's on the line. I don't think he'd be like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to roll the dice with a, former, not even teammate's brother. I don't think that's what this was.
Are you sure Are you sure he knows the scoreboard and he's not a little dyslexic? Because it seemed like a lot of times this year he thought we were ahead and just went ahead and let the score run out.
Yeah, we didn't go 9-3 this year, guys. We didn't go 9-3.
Hey, I predicted 9-3. We went 3-9, so I was.
My dad is perfect evidence of.
I was guilty
dyslexia.
of predictive dyslexia. Certainly, no doubt about it. I everybody's point makes sense to me. I just know that for me, I just don't see why Raiola would have been hired if Frost didn't see something that was going to work. But then again, he brought a whole group of 5 staff with him, and it took him 4 years to realize that the offensive guys he brought with him weren't getting stuff done. So, yeah, I get it. It's questionable. For me, it's probably a gamble at best, and definitely, holy shit, what are we doing at worst?